I'm Rachel Hernandez, real estate investor turned mobile home investor and best-selling author. I make a living investing in mobile homes for cash flow for long-term passive income. After many mistakes and lessons learned, I've been able to create the kind of life where I can do the types of things I want to do, not have to do. I created the Adventures in Mobile Homes podcast to share with you what I've learned so you can spend more time with family, friends, and do things you love. Mobile home investing can help you get there. If you want to hear real stories with practical and actionable advice you can use from someone who's been in the trenches and who's still investing today to create the type of life you love, then you're in the right place. Let's get started. Well, hey there, and welcome to the Adventures in Mobile Homes podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Hernandez, aka Mobile Home Girl of AdventuresInMobileHomes.com. Thank you so much for joining me here for this special bonus episode for the podcast. Now, from time to time, I'll be doing these bonus episodes to give you an update on things or to give you more information about a particular subject. Now, these episodes are going to be more fun and geared towards the community aspect of what I do when it comes to sharing my stories and teaching others about mobile home investing. You'll get to see the other side of things when it comes to doing my work and sharing it with others. So, for this bonus episode, I want to talk to you about my first year of podcasting. Can you believe it's already been a year? I started this podcast project journey at the beginning of the pandemic last year. And my first episode released June 6th, 2020. And now it's June 2021. I tell you, time flies, especially when you're having fun. But apart from the yearly review of the podcast, I also want to give you an update on my new course. I know, a lot of you have been asking me about it, and it's definitely been in the works. I've pretty much spent the entire year putting this course together. Seriously, I kid you not. So, I'll have more information about the course here and what it's all about as well. I have a lot to talk to you about, and this is going to be a fun episode. But before we move on, let's hear a word from our sponsor. Hey there, Rachel here. Have you enjoyed the show and podcast so far? Has it helped you with your own mobile home investing journey? And have you received value from it? If yes, then consider supporting the show. So, how can you show your support? Well, there's a couple of things that you can do. The first thing you can do is leave a review on Apple Podcasts, Podchaser, or anywhere else the podcast can be heard. Go to www.adventuresinmobilehomes.com/podcast to see the sites and links where you can leave a review on. I'll be ever so grateful if you do. And you may even get a shout out and your review read right on the show, just for doing it. Another thing you can do is support the show and buy me a coffee. If you know me, you know how much I love coffee. If you've gotten a lot of good information out of the podcast and it has helped you as a mobile home investor, I'd love your support. Now, in the future, I'll be giving shout outs to those who support me. So if you do, that may be you. Go to www.adventuresinmobilehomes.com/support for more information on how you can show your support. Again, www.adventuresinmobilehomes.com/support. And if you want to take it a step further and receive exclusive only content, consider being a member. On the support page there, you'll find info about how you can view exclusive content, including access to new videos and blog posts, a shout out in a future episode for your support, access to video replays on my past speaking engagements if you haven't seen me speak yet, and more. Check out www.adventuresinmobilehomes.com/support to find out more. Thanks so much for continuing to listen to the podcast and for your support. Now, back to the show. Okay, first things first. Let's talk about the podcast. For those of you who've been with me for a while, reading my blog, Adventures in Mobile Homes, even before the podcast, you'll remember how nervous I was to even start the podcast in the first place. But honestly, it's something that I've been wanting to do for a very long time. I'm talking years. Starting a podcast has been on my mind. And I'm so glad I did. Finally. It's brought so much value, not just for people here in the United States, but all over the world. So I can't thank you enough for listening to the podcast and continuing to listen to the podcast as new episodes come out. Your support means a lot. And thank you so much for sharing the podcast with friends and family. Every time I get a new note or a review from someone regarding how much they listen to the podcast and how much it's helped them, it makes me feel good. Because this is what the podcast is all about. Sharing my stories and teaching others about mobile home investing so that we can all make money and have the time to do the things we want to do, not have to do. And that has always been my message and goal with anything that I do, including the podcast, but with the blog as well. So thank you. Thank you for continuing to listen and helping this podcast grow. Not only have I released 31 episodes of the podcast at the time of this recording, after my first year, but the podcast has also gained a lot of media attention. Here are some highlights. The podcast was nominated for an award with the Asian American Podcasters Association back in December 2020. Now, I've been a member of this organization as an Asian American podcaster myself, and it's been great. Along the same lines, I was also named one of 30 Asian American podcasts to follow by the Women of Color Podcasters, WOC for short. Honestly, I was so honored and humbled to even receive this mention, especially since I just started the podcast last year. As for other media attention, I was also named Squad Pod of the Week and featured in the Squadcast.fm newsletter and all of their social media channels for the podcast. This was a great honor since this is a large company with a known presence among the podcaster community. Now, speaking of large companies, I was also featured in Libsyn as one of their Rockin' Libsyn podcasts. And there are some pretty big name podcasters who host with Libsyn, so I was truly honored and humbled to be included in their feature of their picks for Rockin' Libsyn podcasts on the official Libsyn website. For those of you listening to this episode, as always, I'll be putting all of the links mentioned here in the show notes. So I've got you covered. Apart from all the media attention for the podcast, I also did a number of interviews this year. One of them being on the Side Hustle Show podcast with my good friend, Nick Loper, which has received over 15 million downloads. I'll put a link here in the show notes if you'd like to check out my interview. So, the podcast has gained a lot of attention and is growing. There are so many people visiting the podcast from other countries outside the United States. I couldn't believe all of the different countries that listeners are tuning in from. So, I guess there is an interest in learning about mobile home investing, no matter where people live, which is good and keeps me going. As you can see, there's been a lot of activity when it comes to the podcast. And I'm sure there will be more as it continues to grow. So again, thank you for your support and continuing to listen. It means a lot. It's been a great first year for the podcast. Speaking of support, if you've enjoyed the podcast so far and have received value from it, please consider supporting the show. I've included a link here in the show notes on how you can support the show and how to get access to exclusive content, including a shout out in a future podcast episode for all supporters, access to new posts and videos, access to video replays of my past speaking engagements, if you haven't seen me speak already, and more. Check it out and support the show. Thanks so much. Now, apart from the podcast this year, what else have I been up to? Outside of mobile home investing, that is, as I'm always doing something when it comes to my mobile home investing business. Well, the other item that I'd like to talk about is my new course. Over this year, I've been working on it diligently. Now, if you know me, when I put something together, I really do my research, even if it takes this long, over a whole year to do it. So, what exactly is this course about? Well, it's on a much-needed subject on mobile home investing that I get asked about a lot. So much that I decided to put out a course about it to help everyone out. Because there's so much information and misinformation out there. So, what's the topic? It's on, dun, 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 drum roll please, the SAFE Act and Dodd-Frank. Now, if you're in the United States and or doing business in the United States, both of these laws apply. If you're doing business outside of the U.S., then it's not applicable. Now, many people have already heard about the SAFE Act and Dodd-Frank. and may have even read up on the subject or watched some videos. But if you're not aware, the SAFE Act and Dodd-Frank are both laws that apply when it comes to selling your homes as a real estate investor and even mobile homes using owner financing. After the housing bubble and the Great Recession, starting around 2007, 2008, the government stepped in and basically told us how we, as investors, can sell our homes when using owner financing to do so, thus creating the SAFE Act and eventually Dodd-Frank. So, as a mobile home investor, and if you intend to sell your homes using owner financing, as Lonnie Scruggs, the godfather of mobile home investing, did himself, then you'll need to be aware of these laws, as well as be in compliance. Now, I'm putting the course together, and it's almost done. I've studied it extensively, so the information is all in one place. So, if you want more information about the SAFE Act and Dodd-Frank, and you want to be the first to know when the course comes out, be sure to visit www.adventuresofmobilehomes.com/SafeActDodd-Frank. Again, visit www.adventuresofmobilehomes.com/SafeActDodd-Frank to get more information and be notified when the course is out. It'll be coming out very soon. I just have a few more finishing touches to do on it, but it will be coming out in the next month or so. And yes, I will dedicate an entire podcast episode on the topic. So stay tuned. So there you have it. The first yearly review of the podcast, of what's been happening and the recognition that it's had, as well as the latest update with my new course, which is on the SAFE Act and Dodd-Frank as it applies to mobile home investors. As you can see, I've got a lot going on and a lot of things on my plate right now, apart from running the mobile home investing business. So, what did you think? Has the podcast helped you so far this past year, in its first year, with the 31 episodes I have out so far? And what do you think about the new course coming out? Is it something that you need help with? Definitely let me know. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And if you've enjoyed the show and find value with it, please consider supporting the show. I've really enjoyed this podcasting journey so far, and it's something that I've always wanted to do and will continue to do. Again, I'll include a link in the show notes on how you can support me and gain access to exclusive content if you'd like to check it out. For more information on this episode, check out the show notes where I link up some of the resources mentioned here. You can find it at www.adventuresofmobilehomes.com/bonus yearly review 1. And that is the number 1. Again, www.adventuresofmobilehomes.com/bonus yearly review 1. And if you've enjoyed this episode, please be sure to share it with family and friends. And be sure to follow me and subscribe. If you have some time, I'd love to hear your feedback through a short Apple Podcast review. Until next time, this is Rachel Hernandez, aka Mobile Home Girl of the Adventures of Mobile Homes podcast, signing off. Thanks for listening.